Evening. This is Straight Talk, and a special one tonight with the Supervisor of Elections and Registrar of Political Parties, Mr. Mohammed Saneem. As you know, a lot of talk has been going on in relation to when is the general elections, the processes that have to be followed as far as electoral requirements are concerned, as far as constitutional requirements are concerned. A lot of talk in relation to when can campaign period start. Announcements made today, we'll be looking into that. Of course, in relation to what is the writ of elections and what does it entail and how do processes go in. And a lot of questions have come in from people, from you, our listeners and users who have sent us messages in the form of questions through Fiji Village Messenger. Thank you very much for that, and we will try to get through with all those clarifications with our guest tonight, the Supervisor of Elections. Good to see you again.
Bula Vijay, nice to be here.
I see you've been traveling all over Fiji, different parts of Fiji, and definitely you must be enjoying meeting the citizens of the country. We'll be talking about that as well. Some questions have come through from different parts of Fiji. But let's talk about, first of all, in relation to the electoral process. A lot of people have started calling us, talking to us, information coming through, and they're wanting to find out in relation to, they're saying the elections will be called now, soon, in the next few weeks. It may be a surprise date. However, there's a process, of course, as part of the Constitution. The writ of elections cannot be issued until May. And of course, we cannot have elections. The earliest date would be as early as July 9th this year. If you can explain the process based on the Constitution.
Yes, firstly, in terms of the election, you have correctly said that the first possible date the writ can be issued is the 26th of May. And that would mean that the election will be on the 9th of July, should the writ be issued on the first date. Basically, that 26th of May marks the 3 years, 6 months of the first sitting of Parliament, and from that date until the expiry of the 4 years, the Prime Minister can advise the President at any time for the writ to be issued and the election to be called. The writ cannot be issued before that, unless there is, of course, prevailing circumstances, which is mentioned in the Constitution. But in the normal course of business, the Prime Minister can inform His Excellency the President to dissolve Parliament at any time after the 26th of May.
Now, in relation to the writ of elections, of course, it starts off a whole lot of things that happens in relation to what happens to Parliament, what happens as far as people intending to contest the elections. There's a period of that, if you can explain to the people watching.
When you look at the electoral process, when it comes to the voter, from the voter's perspective, there's about 8 or 10 things that the voter needs to know. From the candidate's perspectives, there is about 15 things that the candidate needs to know. But from the elections management body, which is the Fijian Elections Office, we have to run 664 processes or activities in a period of 50 days. So we were quite busy at the time. However, from the perspective of the voter, the key dates to know is that the closure of voter registration, which happens to be on the date the writ is issued. Then the next is to watch out for the candidates contesting the election. The final list of candidates will be available on 18 days or so plus from the writ day.
14 days after the writ is issued,
the number of
nominations come in.
Nominations come in. Nominations close on 14 days. Then thereafter there's an appeal and objections period. So 18 days after the writ is issued, the numbers will be drawn. So you will know what is the number for your candidate. And then from there on the 23rd day after the writ is issued, postal voting applications close. If you are one of those people who want to apply for postal voting, that's the last day for postal voting applications. Then, of course, you have to know that from 18th, writ day plus 18 onwards is going to be a full-on campaign, and you can expect campaigning. If you're a pre-poll voter, writ day plus 35, you should keep an eye out for the date for elections for pre-poll. And if you are a postal voter, you will start receiving your envelopes also from read day plus 20. Then we have going forward read day plus 42, which is 2 days before elections, when you have a blackout on campaigns, media restrictions on campaigns, as well as campaigns have to stop. And then of course you have the election day itself, where you have to go and vote. Then from election day, in the evening of elections, you will have results. Results are available on the app. There will be a website for results as well. The media will also be publishing results. The results from the media will be the same as the results on the app, unless the media is lagging behind. But that's how you get results for the election. And then 4 days after the elections, if there is no postponement of elections for any reason such as flooding, then you will have the final results of the election.
So there you go. That's the electoral process in
From the voters' perspective.
from the voters' perspective, and political parties have already started discussions. I see a lot more meetings have been planned as we get closer to the election period. And let's talk about voter registration. You are out and about at the moment with your team. A lot of people doing the legwork to make sure that people get registered. A nationwide voter registration and awareness drive currently underway. How important is that at this stage?
It's the most critical part of an election. We have to prepare the voter so that when it comes to the day of elections, the voter is able to exercise the right to vote without any difficulty. And the primary method in which you can vote, actually the basic requirement to vote in Fiji, is that you have to be a registered voter. And in order to register, you have to be either a Fiji citizen and you have to be 18 years and above. So if you meet those two requirements, you can register. Once you are registered, you have your registration, you can vote. And it's also a voluntary system, so you can choose to vote. And from the Fijian Elections Office, we are suggesting that you should choose in the affirmative and you must come and vote.
And the other issue, of course, if you're a Fiji citizen and Fiji allows dual citizenship, if you, as long as you have one of that citizenship is Fiji citizenship, you can still register to vote.
A person who holds a certificate of citizenship for Fiji is entitled to be registered to be a voter in Fiji.
Mr. Saneem, thank you very much for that clarification. Now, how many areas have you visited and how many people have you registered so far during this current massive phase that you're carrying out?
In the last 17 days, we have covered over 557 localities around Fiji. Most of these are in the rural areas. We still have incoming data because many of these places, our teams are there, but they have not been able to transmit information to us simply because there is no network in those areas. So we have over 557 places we've visited and covered approximately 72,000 voters in 17 days. There is still more areas to cover, but that's all in the urban centers. Right now I'm talking about 557 areas, mostly in the rural areas of Fiji.
If there was no current outreach like this, definitely it would have been great difficulty faced by these potential voters to get any access, do you think?
Well, we have had a series of natural disasters in Fiji, and people in the rural areas have been subjected to the brunt of most of these disasters. And before the election takes place, we would like to be able to reach out to these areas, give those people their voter cards, at the same time take down statistics on the status of the polling venue to be used in those areas. Some of these places had polling venues that were destroyed in the natural disasters, so we have to do that. So we have done over 530 plus polling venue assessments already. There's around 1,400 polling venues in Fiji. So these assessments are also ongoing at the same time. Just today I signed off on the removal of 1,900 people, sorry, 980 people from the National Register of Voters because they are now confirmed deceased. So quite a few things are happening on the same trend and during this same time.
Are you happy with the numbers you've got after 17 days? Definitely you would have done your scenario planning and your targets.
Vijay, we are trending at 3 times the number we normally receive including the numbers that we had in 2018, we are trending at 3 times the numbers per day we are getting, and this is just the rural areas. Look at it this way. If we are getting 3 times the numbers, that means 3 times the number of people are preparing to vote.
Thank you very much. On Straight Talk tonight, the Supervisor of Elections and Registrar of Political Parties, Mr. Mohammed Saneem. Mr. Saneem, what is your advice to those people? You've gone to some areas, of course, and you've done the registration. What if they've missed out? What's your advice to them?
Well, there will be centers open in the urban areas, and of course, in the next 8 weeks, people will definitely come to the urban centers. And I was in Tumberua village yesterday. Tumberua village is right at the border of Navosa, Naitasiri and Namosi. It's a 10.3 kilometer trek across the river around 21 times. And I met voters there who were complaining that we came up with the bonanza very late because they've already gone to town and they've upgraded to the latest voter card and they are missing out on the bonanza. So of course that's very good because they're from that far-flung area. However, they've already upgraded to the blue voter card. If someone misses out, that will be the opportunity for them. We'll still have teams in some of these remote areas in hotspots like Budindawa, Government Center and all these places. So that's the plan at the moment, yes.
Now, the change in voter cards, a lot of questions have come in about that. Of course, sometimes when we're in a bubble and we know that, okay, I've got my voter card all sorted out, but there's many who are still asking this question that what card I should get, etc. Before going into that, just how many people have come forward and changed their cards?
Before we started this drive, we were at over 60% who were on the blue card. So we're still trending now. We should be giving you more numbers closer to the end of the drive, or actually closer to the 20th of April.
And we are talking about for people, if you've got a green voter card, you need to upgrade to a blue voter card. Now, why that process has to be undertaken, Mr. Saneem?
So there are many reasons. Let me start with the biggest one. In Fiji, when you come to vote at a polling station, our voter list has your photo. And in the event you turn up and you have another ID, for instance, because you can vote with any ID, you don't necessarily have to have the voter card. We want you to come with your voter card. It will be easier to find you. We look at your photo on the voter list, and we look at you. And if your photo is 10 years younger than what you currently look like, the staff may not accept you as a voter who's on the list. So that's one. The ID card, the registration process took place. Many people registered, 450,000 people registered in 2012. That means 450,000 people have an ID that is 10 years old. In the world of IDs, if your photo is more than 2 years old, that ID is now given lesser credibility. We are currently looking at photos which are 10 years old. So that's one. We need to get your latest photograph so that you can be identified on the voter list without hassle. The second reason is, in Fiji, the registration system started before the electoral system was finalized. What happened after that was that the registration took place of over 450,000 people, and then the electoral system was approved, in which the electoral system requires a voter to vote only where they are assigned. We call it precinct voting. That means that if you are registered to vote at St. Joseph Primary School, St. Joseph Secondary School, you cannot vote in any part of Fiji except that school. So we wanted to write that on your voter card, because in 2018 people went 26% or 23 or 26, it's either of these, percent of people that did not vote. Through a survey we found out that they had moved but they did not change their residential address. So actually they couldn't go and vote. And when it comes to your card, people have to look for where they have to vote. Remember the 1500 text platform?
Yep.
The 545 text platform. In 2014, the 545 platform had 100,000 queries on just the election day.
Yes.
Now we want to make it easy for the voter. Your card will have the venue written on it, and that's your guarantee that if you are holding your latest voter card, you will be registered and you will find your name at that venue. We had situations where in 2014, some people had amended their addresses and they selected some venues because in 2014 that was allowed. It was not allowed in 2018. It will not be allowed in 2022. And what happened was they never reverted it. So in 2018 they simply called and said, I'm still supposed to vote near USP, I'm now in Lotoka. But they had not changed it. But now if your card, your latest card has your venue written on it, your name is guaranteed on it, and you don't have to look for a venue, you just know that's where you have to turn up. So that's the second reason. The third is we have a system in Fiji where people became less interested in elections. Prior to 2018, you will note that 2018 turnout was just 72%. It is on the higher end if you look at global average. It's not a bad number, but compared to turnout in 2014, it was very low. It's from 84 to 72%. Now, it is very easy for people to stand up and say, oh, it's the elections office fault, people didn't vote. We took that on our chin. We went and we did a survey to find out why people didn't vote. And the survey showed that 23% or 26%, it can be corrected, subject to correction. People didn't vote because they moved, but they did not change their residential address. There are more reasons. Many people said, I did not want to vote.
And it was raining on that day as well.
It was raining on that day. That's also one of the reasons why. So, quite interestingly, because we did our scanning and we know, if you look at a voter number, we know from the system whether this person voted or not. A lot of people were caught off guard and they said, oh, I voted. But we know from the voter number that they didn't. So, those are some very mathematical answers, survey answers that give us some indication as to why. So, expiring the voter card was necessary to re-engage voters. It was necessary to re-engage voters. I mean, you have your LTA card expires. You have other IDs that expire. Similarly, voter card needs to be renewed so that you get your latest information on it, and this was one of the ways.
It was interesting, some of the people who also messaged and were asking us the question, because the green voter card does not have an expiry date on it.
Yes.
But for these people, they said questions, what if they turn up with their green voter card on election day this year and say, I want to vote and with a valid ID, what happens then?
So you are bringing an invalid ID.
So green voter cards will not be accepted at all during the 2022
It's an invalid
general
ID.
election.
If you turn up with your green voter card and you turn up to the right polling station, we will still be able to see your photo and ask you a few questions and you will be allowed to vote. It's not that you will be turned away to go home. Nobody will turn you away if you turn up to the right polling station. The trick is to turn up to the right polling station.
But if the green voter card is invalid,
your photo is still on the voter list.
Accepted.
Your photo is
can
still
be accepted.
Okay, so that it works like this. When you come to vote on election day, you can vote by, you will be allowed to vote if you turn up with your voter card, the latest
Blue voter
card. Yes. That will make the process easy. Your voter number will be matched, your photo will be matched, you will be allowed in. If you turn up with an expired ID, that means the staff will treat you as a person who turned up without an ID. So they will ask you a few questions, they will ask you for your name, they will ask you if you have any other ID, such as your driver's license. If your name matches, your photo matches, your date of birth matches, they will allow you to vote. Remember, Vijay, on election day, you can still vote even if you have no ID. That's going to happen if you turn up to the right polling station. Say, for example, one day before elections, your wallet was lost. In that case, you can still go to the polling station that you are registered under, and the staff will verify you by looking at your photo on the voter list. That is why we want your latest photo. Voter lists have your photo. That's the product of our electronic voter registration. So that allows you to vote.
Okay, so the main message here is get upgraded to the blue voter card.
That's it. It's the easiest way. Upgrade to the latest voter card and you will have no hassle. I mean, it would be an inconvenience if you turn up to a polling station and you are trying to flash your green voter card to the staff and say, this is also a voter card, and they turn around to you and say, but it's now invalid. And I mean, some people might want to argue with the staff, but at the end of the day, we can note that on the 17th of March, it was already said on Straight Talk by Vijay Narayan, Mohammed Saneem said, green voter cards are invalid. If you turn up with it, we will still ask you for another valid ID.
And to save the hassle, upgrade your
now.
card to blue voter card.
And you
because if you open the door that side
yes,
and say you can accept, you may
there's
have
no
issues.
point. Yeah.
Then and your people on the ground will then get a lot of people coming and maybe saying I should get accepted and more work and inconveniencing other voters as well.
If you are the first person in the queue and you are there and you are arguing with the staff to accept your green colored voter card, there may be 40 people in the queue who are now being inconvenienced because you are now trying to get your leeway through. The staff will still ask you for a valid ID, not the green voter card, a valid ID. Now, your driver's license is also the same, remember, when it expires. Nothing changes on the driver's license. You don't go and flash that to the police officer and say, let me continue driving, I have an expired driver's license. The whole point of a driver's license is to be able to drive. So the same logic applies to registration as a voter. You may have a green colored voter card in a good condition and everything, but it expired. Bottom line.
Thank you, Mr. Saneem. And the other question is about the importance of having your birth certificate name on your voter card. We know that there has been issues surrounding that in the past two elections. You as the supervisor of elections, of course, did not have a clearly defined legislation where a birth certificate name was needed on the voter card. And we will not go into other areas because the matter is before the court. We've had some questions about it, but we will not go there. But how has that affected your work, knowing that people did not have their birth certificate names on the voter card?
Well, I'll speak procedurally on an elections perspective, and I will not look at the legality or the illegality of this. Let's look at it from an elections perspective. We are in the middle of an election registration drive. This question demands to be answered, and it does not have any bearing or influence on any other matter. So, with that disclaimer, first and foremost, a voter list is the primary document that allows you the transaction, which is your right to vote. At your polling station, that is the primary document. You are on the list, you can vote. You are not on the list, you cannot vote. Now, there are very many principles around the voter list, and one of them being that the voter list excuse me, must be verifiable. How do you verify a voter list? A voter list is verified by looking at a person to the list and the list to the person. Meaning, you pick up the voter list today and you go and stand outside and you call 20 people from the voter list, that 20 people need to raise their hand. Now, the other one would be 20 people walk up to you and say, I want to find myself on the voter list, and that should be possible because they have their voter card. The problem arises when you cannot verify these 20 people as one being of 18 years of age or a valid citizen of Fiji. How does a person become a citizen of Fiji? Under section 55 of the Constitution, you are a citizen of Fiji if you are born in Fiji, a birth certificate, or by naturalization, which is a certificate of citizenship. And your age being 18 is verified by no other document than your birth certificate. Not your notice of birth, not anything else but your birth certificate. A passport is not proof of your birth. So, how does the Fijian Elections Office keep the voter list verifiable? We run it against the BDM register, Birth, Deaths and Marriages register, and we run it against the list of citizens at the Immigration Department. Now, the way to test the names and dates of birth with the BDM register is you must get 100% match. Otherwise, if you can't get 100% match, tomorrow somebody can come and object, say for example your own registration, to say Vijay Narayan is not a citizen of Fiji. So what will be the test to prove citizenry? You will say I have a birth certificate, and you rock up to me and say my birth certificate says, may I use an example?
Sure you will.
Vijay Kumar. So how do I then prove that you are Vijay Kumar on the voter list? I can't, because you are Vijay Narayan on the voter list. Your date of birth matches, your residential address matches, but Mr. Narayan, you are not a citizen of Fiji, I have to remove you from the list.
I just want to ask one question.
Yeah.
From the very beginning, this requirement was needed.
Yes.
Didn't you see as the supervisor of elections that this should be a requirement to save us all this hassle?
So, an election is a continuous development and an improvement process. Sometimes you may not get everything right on the first go, but it doesn't mean the election was faulty. But you continue to improve. I mean, if you don't continue to improve, then you would still be using wooden ballot boxes that were there from 2006 and the big wooden platform dividers and the curtains. I mean, we had to give away bales and bales of curtains from the elections office. Nobody uses that. We use cardboard voting booths now. I mean, nobody's complaining about that. That's an improvement from 2006. But with the voter list, it's a continued process of improvement, continued process of verification. Now, your question is very interesting. We need to continuously find new ways of verifying the voter list to ensure that the voter list, one, doesn't get bloated with people who are not entitled to vote. Number two, it doesn't get bloated with deceased persons. If you have watched that movie Bhootnath, Bhootnath was a case where a person who was recorded as deceased contested the election in India simply because at that time the law in India did not stop deceased persons from contesting elections. So, we have to remove those ineligible people from the list. Now, a person who is deceased must be removed from the list without delay. But we don't remove a person simply because someone is deceased and there is a report from the family. We actually verify that from the birth, deaths and marriage registry. One interesting scenario I bring to you, there was a lady I met in Nambuwalu. As soon as I got off in Nambuwalu, the first registration center I visited, a lady came to me and said, Bhaiya, you know in 2018 I was not able to vote. I said, why? I was recorded as deceased. So I said, oh, but you are right in front of me. It was same name, same date of birth.
There was an incident also that happened in the past few months.
Yes.
Where a woman, same thing happened, that when she went to update her registration details, and she was declared dead already, and she had to then prove by declaration. What's the process after that?
So this is the thing. When you don't use names by birth certificate, right, and address, then you have this situation. In 2014, a close friend of mine, her father came to me and said, my God, I have been recorded as deceased, but I am still alive. And we looked, and in fact the person had a death certificate, but the person was not from Suva, the person from Nandi had passed away. So there is these kind of things in a register have to be checked, and the only way to check it is closer to elections. We need to re-engage with people. So we decided that for 2022 the way to re-engage with people is to upgrade the card. Now, if I had not had that system of upgrading the card, that lady from Bua would not have been able to vote in 2022 again, because she was simply saying, oh, I have a voter card, but I can't vote. So when we went there and she came and she said, this is the situation, we have now sorted that out. So there may be other people who are in that circumstance. And all this is happening because we need to be able to link up to the BDM. The way to do it is the name.
How many cases of people declared dead have you had that these people have come to your offices?
The Nambuwalu one is the first one that I've experienced for this session, this round. But it is interesting because the lady who came to me, she was referring herself with her another name in the surname, right? So of course that matches with the name of the deceased. The interesting thing is, once you go back to the birth certificate names, then the Ministry of Births, Deaths and Marriages, they contain a register too of the deceased people, and then it's going to be easier for us to link up to record the deceased. Now with the birth certificate, there's two ways of doing this now. We have your birth certificate name on our system, then we have your BRN number. Now the BRN number is a birth registration number which is attached to people at the time they register. It cannot be the number because some people are born overseas. They are now citizens of Fiji, they are born overseas, they don't have a BRN number from Fiji, but they are citizens, they are entitled to register as well. So we are using the FEO's voter card number. Now once we register people on the birth certificate name and they pass on, the death notice will be made on the birth certificate name. That's easier for us to verify and remove. Vijay, going to birth certificate names is also important for various other reasons. Prisoners who are serving a sentence of more than 2 years are not entitled to vote. But if they are registered on our system with another name, they will not be removed from our system until and unless it's proven it's them. So that's another ineligible person that would be on the roll, although they will not be able to come and vote because they are in the prison, but that's supposed to be clean. The system is supposed to have them off the system, and then when they come back out of the prison, and then they are entitled. So these are some of the procedural complications that are there, but it also reduces the risk of fraud, you know.
Now, with the law in place, how is the facilitation of the name changes? For example, married women who have their married name on the voter card instead of their birth certificate name, of course, they've got that option whether they go with their birth certificate name, that they definitely, the scenario is not to go into the other process of going through the process of changing into married name from the birth certificate and then changing the voter card. How is that facilitation going on at the moment?
Well, the option is there. If someone wants to use a name that is not on the birth certificate, the FEO can assist you with the change of name. You simply fill in the form, you hand it over to us. We will have it processed at the BDM. After the BDM has processed it, we'll get your new birth certificate, we'll prepare your new voter card, we'll deliver it to you, or you pick up from a point of contact that you have already identified. That is the process. It's free of charge. The FEO facilitates this. We even facilitate this if you are living in an island, or you're living in the highlands, or you're living in the urban centers, or you're living in a rural area. We will facilitate that for you. Registration as a voter does not mean that you are bound to use that name for everything else. If you are using that as an ID card, of course, every other agency then will require you to use your birth certificate name. That is in the law. If you want to use a name that you like, as soon as you turn 18, you are entitled to change your name as per your wish. No questions asked. Why, who, when is not a question that the BDM asks. It's your right to have a name that you like. Now, if you have a name that is of sentimental value to you, you can simply add that to your name. We have situations where people own property and they have owned it with other names. When that person is to deal with that property, they have to give a declaration to say, I am so and so, and I am also known as so and so and so and so and so and so. Personal example, my father himself, his name was spelled differently at the ITLTB. He was a farmer, he used to pay his rental, and when he passed on, we went to get his estate papers done. And I had to list 7 names in his estate paper because he was known by 7 different spellings. His name was still the same, but 7 different spellings. And we had to list that. And still in various places, when we went to deal with his estate, the sons, we had to give declarations that his name was this and he was known by this name, and in this place his name is recorded as this, which is a spelling issue, and that. So that has to be dealt with. Once you amend your name, once you change your name to the name that you've used frequently, you will avoid all those hassles. Another example is one of my bosses. Her name has forever, she has used her married name. So prior to the law being changed, she was in the process of engaging a legal counsel to get the name to what she has been always using, because all her company documents and all her property documents were all on the married name. And she was given a fee quote of $550 by the lawyers. Once the law changed, she was able to get this done free of charge, and now all her documents are in sync, meaning she doesn't have to give declarations every time. The one very touching issue here that is usually contended is married women. Now, whilst there are other perspectives, there is one more that I would like you to consider. You now don't have to justify why you are using that additional surname. You don't have to go and show proof of marriage. You simply go and tell BDM, this is the new name I want, and they will just approve it. You don't have to show cause why you are this. And once you are no longer married to that person and you have moved on in life, and perhaps you have moved on and married another person, you again don't have to show cause why you are now using a name that is no longer yours, or why you have divorced. There is a situation where someone was prohibiting another person from using a name by saying, this person is no longer married to me, is not entitled to use my name. But there is no ownership on a name. No, it's not that. So the person can simply now just say to BDM, I want to use this name. And that's how it works. You don't have to show that you are divorced. You don't have to show that you have remarried. So you are now carrying three documents. One was your first marriage certificate, then your divorce, your decree, and then the last one is your current marriage certificate. All that inconvenience and discrimination is out.
But still, if you get married, this for women, of course, the option is, the choice is up to them. If they want to take up the husband's name,
yes,
they'll take it up. Of course, then they take that to get the new voter card.
Yes.
And their married name will be part of the birth certificate.
Yes.
And if they decide to divorce and get married again, and they decide to use the second husband's name,
yes,
they have to go and change the details again.
Yes. But no one will ask you why.
No, but I'm saying that you still have to go and change those details.
Yes. But previously, if you didn't, like for example, your passport is valid for 10 years, and you have remarried with another name and the surname has to change, then you have to go, when you go somewhere, you have to say that this is my passport, but this is my new marriage certificate. So the person says, oh, you have married again. And you have to explain, yes. Which is something that you shouldn't have to, because it's your choice to take a name whichever you want.
Just say, change my name again. Please.
That's the application. There is no fee, and that's how it's done, yes.
Now, we have talked about this in previous elections as well, and this will continue to be an issue in the current age we live in, technology, in relation to misinformation, disinformation, and lack of information, or a little bit of information can also be dangerous. How are you dealing with that?
We are dealing with misinformation by providing direct information. When it comes to the election, the Fijian Elections Office is the organization that is running the election. We are the ones who are the implementing authority. The most credible and correct information on elections will come from us. If we say that we will not be doing registrations of students during the KYE because they are not in school, that information is directly from us, which means we will not be doing it. No other person can go and say they will be doing that registration. That's how we will be dealing with this. We will counter misinformation with direct information.
Thank you, Mr. Saneem. Just a connected question. Amendments have been made to the laws where you, as the Supervisor of Elections, can take action in relation to misinformation and disinformation, and you've started to do that. Please explain this to the people.
It is our responsibility to protect the voters when it comes to the election. And this responsibility entails protecting them from misleading information. There is a bulk of the population that is not interested in misleading information. They want direct information, they want credible information, and this comes from the source, which is the Fijian Elections Office. There is a possibility that some people are trying to take advantage of the opportunity of access to social media and other forms of media to spread misinformation. So we have the power now in the law to direct a person to correct misinformation that they have posted, and if not, ask them to take it down. This applies to any person who has posted any information that may be false. We will not be stopping people from putting up criticisms, from putting up disagreements, but where your statement borders on guiding people into something that is not going to happen, then we will take action.
What's the type of action you'll take?
So first is we can direct the person to correct the information, or we can ask the person to take it down. That's the two options we have.
What's the next step?
So the law says that if a person does not comply with either of the directives, then the person will be reported to FICAC for necessary action.
And there's penalties there, maximum penalties. What are the penalties?
I think the maximum penalty is 5 years or $50,000.
You'll straight talk tonight with the Supervisor of Elections, Mr. Mohammed Saneem. Now, Mr. Saneem, last year and earlier in the year, there have been calls made by some parties for you not to be the Supervisor of Elections, not to be in this position. There were also reports that you had allegedly contemplated leaving. Can you please clarify this to the people? Questions still continue to be asked. What is your stand on this? And did you actually contemplate leaving the position?
The 2022 general election may take place at any time between 9th of July 2022 and 9th of January 2023. As the Supervisor of Elections, this is not the time for me to leave. This is the time for action, and that's what I'm doing.
Did you contemplate leaving before this?
The people of Fiji,
I'm asking
are
you,
being
did you
assured.
contemplate leaving before this? It could have been your personal decision, but did you?
Well, I don't have to speak of my personal choices on air. The fact is, the line divides my personal and my professional. Now, is it important to you? It is if I left, because that's when a constitutional office holder left. People wake up in the morning every day and they might think, today I don't want to go to work. That's not relevant to you. If they actually don't turn up and you have to be provided a service by that person on the day, that's relevant to you. In this job, many times you have questions that you ask, why am I doing this? You can sometimes get colloquial with this and do I deserve this shit? I don't have to say this. Right? I've never said it. It's an interesting job. It's fun. But if I leave, you can ask me this question on the day I've actually left.
So you're not denying it?
I'm not even saying it.
Well, I'm saying you're not denying it. You're not confirming it, nor denying it.
That's your assumption.
Thank you, Mr. Saneem. Just under amended laws, political parties have to clearly outline how they will get funds to support new policies, initiatives, incentives announced in their manifesto. Of course, manifestos are very important during the elections. They go to the people and say, I'll do this, this, this. A lot of questions have come up in the past in relation to promises made and promises not delivered, execution not done. Now, please confirm how this process will take place after changes in the laws and how this information has to be furnished.
It's a very interesting question. The way in which the manifesto will be dealt with is to see the feasibility of certain things. Now, I'm not going to talk into how I'll do it yet, but we're looking at some of the ways other countries do it. It's interesting, like, let's do an example. You cannot build a bridge from Natovi to Nambualu, as an example. Now, if someone promises you that they will build a bridge from Natovi to Nambualu, that's something that you have to see what is the cost of the bridge. Where is that funding coming from? We don't have oil coming out of any part of Fiji where you can possibly say suddenly we'll have money coming in through that. But that's one example, like the realistic test. But there are other things. Of course, once we get closer to the dates, these things have to be coming out. We'll come out with more tips on how it will be done, how the assessments will be done. But these are some very interesting times where, for the first time in Fiji, you actually have to prove how you will fund your manifesto. This means, on the one hand, for the benefit of the voter, the manifestos have to come out early. There is no last-minute manifestos. That means the voter will have the time to sit down and go through these manifestos. I was speaking to somebody and I was talking about how they evaluate whom to vote, and they completely did not talk about reading a manifesto to see what information is actually contained in it, to realize what the policies are and how they are. So I said, so you are basically someone who's guided by commentary? And they said yes. I said, would you like to be someone who is actually not guided by commentary but guided by research? And the person said, I need to know how it's going to be done. So manifestos will play a greater role in the elections going
The
forward.
mechanics of how it's furnished and assessments made will be announced in due course.
And of course, this will also allow parties to compete with each other to say, oh, you are suggesting, I have to use an example that I'm very familiar with. You are suggesting that a vehicle part is going to cost $20. I'm going to fund it at $10. Where are you getting the middle $10? And so that's something that parties will check each other out as well. It will become a realistic discussion.
Well, that's where new options open up on what different parties will be offering, and realistic options as well.
Yeah. And that the
I know you'll be
political-
interested in Natovito number Walu because you are from Vanuatu, but
yes,
whether it
anything
can
that
be
gets
done
me
or not
home.
is
Yes, but Vijay, the other thing to remember is that an election is a contest between all political parties. So all the parties will play a role in verifying and vetting each other's manifesto, and because you are contesting each other in the election, so it will be interesting how manifestos are promoted and how manifestos are actually verified and debated.
Mr. Saneem, questions have come up about polling stations and polling venues. Of course, there's a difference. If you can talk about that, how many are confirmed for the 2022 general elections, and how many voters are being allocated per station and venue?
Thank you, Vijay. Let me just be very clear. One polling venue can have many polling stations. The best example to understand this would be that one school is a venue and the classrooms are stations. So you can have St. Joseph Secondary, that's the polling venue, and you can have polling stations numbers 1 to 8 in that venue, which are 8 stations in one polling venue. And the number of venues we are looking at is about 1,453. Plus or minus, we'll see closer to the election depending on the venues. And number of stations at this point in time, 2168. The number of people voting per station has now been increased by the Electoral Commission from 500 to 650.
Now, what is being done to ensure observers and party agents understand the processes during polling and counting to ensure there is no misinformation? At times, you've had incidents in the last 2 elections where party agents, etc., and information coming through political parties disputing certain things, the way things have happened. What is being done this year to ensure we minimize that?
Interesting. This question takes me back to that memory. You remember we had this press conference where I had to take you, I think you attended this press conference, and we walked into the room where we had to show political parties. I think Ms. Saini Nambo was the one who was heavily contesting the definition of next to the table.
How far can you stand from the
Yes.
the
So
counting place?
these are some of those mechanical things that come up in an election. And to do this tomorrow, the Friday, from 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock I think, we are having a meeting where we are demonstrating to political parties the setup of a polling station. That's our first demonstration to political parties, to demonstrate to them how a polling station is set up. And once they come, they will be shown that. So we are planning to do a lot of show and tell to political parties so that they actually can see. To assist political parties in preparing for the election, we have already developed and published the polling agents handbook. This handbook has been given to political parties last year, 30th of September, and they can use that to prepare for the election because their agents on the ground need to know all that information. So that started, that's already out there. The candidates handbook will be coming up shortly. This handbook will be for those who are contesting the election. The new law changes actually had to have a bearing on the forms that we have to use with the introduction of the name as in birth certificate. we have to now add the requirement of a birth certificate to be provided together with the nomination. So these are things that we will be informing the parties in due course. So the candidate's handbook is coming up, but a few demonstrations and simulations will be done with political parties so that they can actually see how the process will be done and replicated in 2,000 polling stations.
And of course, we'll be there as well, showing you the videos as well, and commenting on how the processes are done for you to watch and understand the process being undertaken. Mr. Saneem, questions have come in relation to the printing of ballot papers and whether ballot papers will have serial numbers. Can you please comment on that?
It's a very very attractive idea when somebody says ballot papers should have serial numbers. Why? Because you are used to serial numbers on notes, you are used to serial numbers on receipt books, you are used to serial numbers on basically everything. What does a serial number help you do? It helps you track. And how does it help you track? It helps you track to say that if serial number 9 was the receipt for Vijay, serial number 10 would be the receipt for Mohammed Saneem. So it helps you track. And if serial number 10 has been torn off, then you will know that the one for Saneem has been torn off. Look for it. We don't want that in an election because the vote is secret. The principle of democracy, the principle of voting, primarily rests on the fact that the vote is secret. You put a serial number on it, it's no longer secret. Now in Fiji, when you have a village of 47 people voting, you know that the book will start from 1 to 47. There is a very easy chance that you will look at everybody and say this is 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Suddenly at counting stage, they take out a ballot paper number 24 and it's a vote for somebody the whole village didn't agree to vote for. Then they will go for that person and say, you were supposed to mark this number, why didn't you mark it? Firstly, you're not supposed to block vote, so you can't force somebody to vote. Secondly, that person having that right not to be forced to vote for somebody should not be caught out. There's a level of secrecy. You don't give secrecy, don't have elections. Raise your hand. Raise your hand and say, we all vote for this person. And you look at an election where you have to raise hands, there is always kach-kach. Because you suddenly see somebody didn't agree with you and afterwards you want to have your revenge on that person. Elections is meant for anybody to make their choice in secrecy. The point is secrecy.
Secret ballot.
If you want to count how many ballot papers are there, you become a polling agent. You come in the morning. When they are reconciling, they will count how many ballot papers were there and how many are in the box. That's how you do it. You don't go and look for serial number 23 because on number 23 Mohammed Saneem was in the line and see, hey, Mohammed Saneem voted for this number. Why would he vote for this number? And that kind of discussion is going to take place. So who shouldn't know? Nobody should know. Not election officials, not polling agents, not the court. The constitution says secret. That means nobody should know. You can't be revealed. Your vote can't be revealed. That's the whole point of this. So no matter how lucrative it looks, how sensible it looks, it's defeating the primary purpose of having an election. In a place in Fiji, we had 5 voters that voted for a woman candidate. If you had serial numbering, the polling staff would have known which 5 voters were the one that voted for the woman candidate. But what is the point of trying to find out if you want it to be a secret ballot? So it has to be a secret ballot. No matter what other explanation you give, I will not agree with you. Because simply, if you put any kind of marking, someone said, oh, put a QR code. Well, the QR code means someone will be able to read it. But why do you want to know why someone voted that way? If you are worried that there will be more ballot papers in the box, have your polling agents in the polling station throughout the day. There is somebody in Fiji called a ballot box guard. You have those kind of people, you have that appointment in third world countries. In Australia, nobody keeps a guard on the ballot box. They have to just keep an eye. Nobody is standing there and guarding the box. In third world countries, you have a person holding on to the ballot box in case someone will want to run away with it. I mean, there's an example in Papua New Guinea where they take the entire ballot box, empty it, they burn the boxes, they burn the paper, they fill in new ballot boxes. Those things don't happen in Fiji where you have what they call the cleansing of the box. But at the end of the day, it's supposed to be a guarded secret. that nobody knows who you voted for. You can have 47 people in the line, and at the end of the day 46 people vote in one direction and one person has the right to differ. That is the whole point of having a democracy.
Administration of making sure how the ballot papers are released and the reconciliation of that.
Yes.
You had explained during the past elections.
Exactly.
Please explain that.
So, if we issue a polling station with a book, that will have 50 ballot papers. Before they start the voting process, they don't take it for granted that this is one book, so 50. They count it in front of agents. They count it to make sure there is 50. Once that 50 is released to the person dispatching ballot papers, you can expect 50 or less ballot papers in the box. Why do I say less? It's your freedom. You may come and have your name ticked off, but you may not drop the ballot paper in the box. You may say, I'm not going to drop the ballot paper in the box, I'll walk out with my ballot paper, I'll keep it as souvenir. You can of course do that, but you can't put it in the box and try and take it out. No, once it's in the box, it's in. So that's how we reconcile. In the evening before the count is done, we count for how many are left in the book. Then we look at the box, open the box, take it out, and we try and balance. It has to match the number issued or less. If it is more, check again. If it is more, call Supervisor of Elections, decision will be made, necessary actions will be taken. So far in the last two elections, touch wood, in the next one we haven't had a situation where there is more, because our staff are very meticulous. They are trained. The processes are so simple that they have very specific instructions. Once they have signed off, they take the ballot paper out, they give it to the voter, tell them how to vote. So that's how we do it. We don't put serial numbers, we don't put QR codes, we don't put anything that will allow anybody to trace. Now, interestingly, people usually refer to New Zealand and say, in New Zealand we have serial numbers on ballot papers. Yes, when we went to the New Zealand elections, we highlighted this to the Commission that we believe the secrecy is not there. The Electoral Commission told us, before we issue the ballot paper, we cover that with a sticker. But Vijay, that's New Zealand elections. They have been having elections for 100 years. In New Zealand, if the presiding officer runs out of ballot paper at the polling station, they simply write down the names of all the candidates on a white sheet of paper and give it to the voter to mark and drop in the box. Will we accept something like that in the Fijian election? Your smile says it all. We don't even accept. I mean, we have had allegations where there were claims that the observers had left the country when the head of the observer mission is sitting in a press conference right in the room. And those kind of flabbergasting remarks have been made. Forget the fact that we'll allow a person to write the number and drop it in the box and accept that as a valid ballot paper. We are way too far from that. So let's start settling down in elections. Let's start with maintaining the basic principles. Secrecy of the ballot is paramount. That is what we want. That is what we need to keep. No serial numbers, no QR codes, no nothing on the ballot paper that can tag anybody to that ballot paper.
And just to let you know, as we're coming to the end of the show, but we will also demonstrate to you, because we've been through the process twice. Mr. Saneem has run through the process about how the administration of the ballot papers take place, and also the reconciliation of it with party agents present and other observers. So we will be definitely in the coming days and months be going to that. Now, Mr. Saneem, what are you doing to make sure that we have maximum voter turnout in the 2022 general elections?
Excellent point, Vijay. This is the best time to talk about this. To start with it, we are making sure that voters don't have a reason not to turn up. And one of those reasons would be that I did not change my I changed my residential address and I did not change my polling venue. This nationwide registration drive is specific for those people. If you have moved and you have changed your residential address, this is the time to upgrade, update your details, upgrade to the latest voter card so you know where you have to go. If you know where you have to go and you have your voter card, that's your primary way to be sure you can go and vote. That's one. Number two is be a prepared voter. Election day will be a public holiday. If it's a public holiday, that means you have a lot of time to go and vote. 10.5 hours, that's how long the polling stations are open. We want to encourage everybody to go and vote. When we go to all these villages and settlements and we sit with people and we say, you know, in Suva the turnout was only 62%, and they all go, we thought all the people who are work in Suva are educated, they will go out and be the most number of people who will vote. You know, these are some of the expectations. People in the rural areas where the turnout was 78%, 79%, they are expecting people in the cities and towns to do. That's your public holiday. We are thinking of this time talking to the relevant authorities to ensure that it is a public holiday where things don't open early in the morning. Because if you are a staff of a retail store that opens at 9 a.m. on public holiday and you live in Navua but you are working in Suva, there is no way you will go during your lunch hour to Navua to vote. Very few people will do it. Instead they will say, oh, someone else is going to vote anyway, I'll just miss out, I'll continue earning my double time. So we are going to be talking to authorities to put some limitations on this, to promote the vote. Of course, employers are being very responsible. They told us, oh, we've told our staff, vote then come. We're going to start at 10 a.m. Vote then come. So on election day itself in 2018, we had some staff go around and do some surveys in some of these places. We asked them, did you vote already? And they said no. And we said, do you plan to vote? No, by the time I go back, it will be 6 o'clock. I won't vote. So we asked them. Actually, I went to have lunch on election day and I asked the person who was serving me, I said, when do you plan to vote today? And they said, you know, Mr. Saneem, I don't think I will be voting today. And I said, why? No, because one of the staff didn't come, so I will be pulling through lunch hour and I will be making more money. And I was very sorry for her. I felt very sorry for her and I said, perhaps your boss should allow you some time to go and vote. Oh yeah, he's allowed me time. I'm just not going because I need to make that extra hour. How do we deal with that? So the best way to do it is to
you're talking to authorities to make sure employees get the time to go and vote, even on public holiday.
On public holiday, employers have granted them the time, but it's whether they will actually invest in the money to go back to Navua and vote. So probably to say as a scenario, if things have to open, perhaps open after 3 p.m. So at least those people who have to vote, they have time until 2 p.m. before which they can start making their way to the workplace to start opening at 3. And that's one of the options.
And as you know, under the Constitution, voting is not compulsory. What we are talking about is just making sure those who want to vote get registered and to go and vote. We know that there will be no electronic voting in Fiji in the 2022 general elections, although some people are still saying that things will be done electronically. Based on the Electoral Act, can you please explain the process after polling closes at 6 p.m. On polling day, and how the votes are tallied, the checks and balances in place, and the results being announced?
I completely agree with you. There is no software, there is no voting electronically, there is no machine, nothing that is going to be for voting. Voting is still manual. Counting will be done by the counting teams. For pre-poll votes at the count center, for your polling station on election day, it will be counted at the polling station. Now, after 6 o'clock on election day, when the last person in the queue has voted, the presiding officer will close the polling station. All the people who are polling agents, if they are inside the polling station, they will be allowed to stay. If they are outside, they will not be let in. No more persons coming in. Then the presiding officer will first of all tally everything. How many ballot papers were issued, how many persons' names have been crossed off the voter list, and how many ballot papers are remainder, right? How many books are left. They will tally everything, they will reconcile it, then they will go to the ballot box, they'll rearrange the polling station, they will put the tables in a manner in which it's visible to the polling agents to see, observers to see, and once they have done that arrangement, then they will check the seals that were put in the box in the morning, they will reconcile the seals on the box, they'll open the seals, they'll cut the seals, they put it in the temp evident envelope, and then they will empty the ballot box onto the table, and all the ballot papers will be on the table. They will then mix it so that the person who voted last, his ballot paper is not sitting on top. They will mix it so that it becomes randomized, and then after that they will start sorting it. So they will first sort it. So you'll see the ballot paper in Fiji has got numbers. So each row will be sorted. They will first sort by row, then they will go by each number in that row, and they will count it. They'll continue to wrap it. They'll put it in the box, and then at the end, once all the counting has been done, the results will be recorded, and the announcement, actually the pink slip will be pasted at the polling station. They will convey the results to us either electronically or by phone, and we will be announcing it from 6 p.m. on election night until 7:30 in the morning. Is it 7:30 or 7? I think
Around 7:30.
I think it's 7 a.m. 7 a.m. not 7:30. 7 a.m. in the morning, until when we'll be giving provisional results, and after that we will stop giving provisional results. Now let me be very clear that from 7 a.m. we will do another system flush in the presence of political parties. Then we will start entering the results again, and these are results that are directly from the signed sheets of paper that have come from each polling station. We will be entering it again. Provisional results have been given until 7 a.m. and finished. We are not giving provisional results after 7 a.m. So that means that the system will start from zero again. So from zero we'll start entering the results again. We'll give more detailed results by polling station. We'll keep entering that, and the plan is to give you result bursts every 6 hours. So it doesn't mean that suddenly we are redoing the provisional results. No, we are re-entering the data from the sheets of paper that have come, the signed sheets of paper. It will start from zero, and we will keep repeating. So we may have received the result from Koronumbu Primary School, but we will get the signed sheet of paper again. We'll re-enter that in the system, and the result in the final result column will show that school. We are not going to correct the provisional results. Provisional results may have errors, sometimes error in entry and error in listening. It doesn't mean that we are going to go back and correct it. We are entering the results from the beginning again until all the results are entered from the protocols of results. We will be doing data bursts every 6 hours on the app. You will get your results every 6 hours. It will take up to 4 days, so please have patience. We will not, so say for example the provisional results are for 1000 polling stations. So after 7 a.m. please do not say continue entering for the polling stations that are left. No, it's ended. It's given you an indication of where the election is heading. Final results will be entered again and right up until the end of all the results. It will take up to 4 days. Is that clear, Vijay? Do you think we should explain this further? Because you and I have experienced this clarification issue every time the election has happened.
Yes, Mr. Saneem, I think this will be an ongoing issue. That's why you will be back on Straight Talk for a number of sessions that we continue talking. A lot of questions have been asked in relation to this even today. And just one final question. People are asking, when will they have the last chance to register for the next elections?
I think the best answer to that question is that your last chance is the last time you see a registration team near you. I'm going to leave that as a guessing game. The best answer to that is that you should register immediately. The first chance you see a registration team, that may be your last chance, because you may not have the time to go back. You and I have seen in the last 2 elections, there is a huge crowd on the writ day. And people complain wherever they can to say, I didn't get the chance to go and upgrade. I was standing in the line. It was a big line. It was a very big line. The MHCC was completely blocked out. MHCC line went right up to Teppu cities. The road was blocked. These were the stories of 2018. There are videos to prove this. We started with 20 teams, and on the writ day we finished with 60 teams in Suva itself. This is how intense it gets. That's because of the famous last minute culture that we have. So let's do it this way. The next time you see a registration team, you get your card done, because what if that is the last time you see the registration team and you are too busy to go to a registration team and you haven't done your card and you have moved from Lotoka to Suva, so that's one vote you might miss out on.
There you go. So when you get the chance to register, as the electoral The elections office teams are going out. Please do get registered. If you have to upgrade your voter card, we are telling you, you heard it here on Straight Talk, get the blue voter card. Do not rely on the green voter card, because that will cause you a number of issues on election day. If you really want to vote, get the blue voter card. In relation to birth certificate, as Mr. Saneem has said tonight, that if you want that process of changing the name be carried out, the elections office will facilitate that, even for those in the rural areas, and to get that done. The choice is yours, of course, in all of this. We'll be having more discussions with Mr. Saneem in relation to the elections. Mr. Saneem, thank you very much.
Thank you,
We
Vijay.
know that you've taken out time from a busy schedule, from going to different settlements, even from the heart of Viti Levu, etc., to come for this show. And you'll be back again, as we discussed, in the coming weeks and months, as we continue to talk about elections. Today also, the Electoral Commission has confirmed that the official campaign period starts from April 26th. That is not the date of the writ of elections. Some people are getting confused with that. That is not the date. The writ of elections, as we know under the Constitution, it will be based on the Prime Minister informing the President that we want the writ to be issued because we would want to go into elections, and then there's a process that takes 50 days from there, 44 days from there to ensure they get things done. So that's as far as election is concerned. With the special Straight Talk back after COVID-19 coverage, we will now continue to cover topical issues that matter to you. Thank you again for watching us tonight, for listening to all the clarifications, and we'll be back soon.